All right, everybody, how we doing? Welcome back. Day 5 of the summit continues. We've got a best ball draft for you. Jen Ryan will be joining Mike and myself. We'll have the draft up on the screen. Mike Dempsey, you can see him in the corner. Like the usual best ball, in case you didn't know, best ball is a set and forget draft. You go in, you play, you make your draft. You don't have to do lineups. You don't have to worry about anything at all. Mike is kind of the master of this, of our little group. Mike, you want to just kind of run through everybody what you're about?
I don't know if I'm the master, but I've been doing a lot of them. I'm up over 120 completed this year, but really I haven't done many in the last few weeks, so it'll be interesting to see how ADP has shifted. I've got other than this one right now. Ultimately, I played 100 last year, want to play 150 this year. It's definitely – I still love Dynasty the best, Bob, but this is my new favorite format to play in fantasy football for sure.
Right. It is, and we play a lot, and this should be interesting because we play each other a lot.
Yeah.
And that always makes it easy. I've also, Jen Ryan, I also drafted. Mike Beers is in here with us. I drafted with him a fair amount. You know, he's been on over 100 drafts. So, you know, you show up in a draft room and it's not a surprise to see his name in there, and he'll be in this one as well. You want to run us through the draft order, Mike?
Sure. As much as I can here, yeah. Let me take a look at the
there's Jen.
Mike Beers got the first pick. Casey Joyner will be in the 2 slot, if I'm not mistaken. I've got Bobby Gomes in slot number 3. Looks like Armando will be picking 4th. Bob, you're 5th, which usually means I'm 6th or 4th, right? We usually seemingly always draft back-to-back, but that will not be the case tonight. Fantasy Couch coming in the 6th hole. I'm just going off the Twitter names here. Fantasy Assassin at 7, and I'm picking in the 8th spot. Don't love the 8th spot, but I'll make do with what we've got there. Gary Davenport, IDP Sharks, who just posted in the chat that I have a face for radio. Hey, Gary, get a haircut. Why don't you, okay? Let's see. What do we got here? Gridiron Scholar, Johnny Love in the 10th spot there. Emil Cadlick in the 11th, and last but certainly not least, hello, Jen Ryan. How are you?
And Jen, hello. Just to bring you in, Jen at FFDegenerate on the Twitter. Mike at MD1010, MD_1010XL. And I'm at Football Diehard. And look, we're going to be moving fast. These are 1-minute timer on this picks. We'll be bringing the screen up. I'll be bringing the draft board up momentarily so you can see it. And Jen, by the way, congratulations. She will be writing some pieces for CBS Sports starting this year. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. All possible, of course, thanks to you as well, Bob.
I don't know about that. I think it was more about you. But anyhow, how do you feel about drafting at that turnaround, Jen?
I mean, it's tough. It's like the first pick in reverse, essentially. I have to double up. I have to jump a little bit for people. There's certainly not going to be any fall in value, I don't think, too much at the turn. So I have to make my moves. It's you know, at this point I'm used to drafting from pretty much every spot. It's not my favorite, but it's also not my least favorite.
And how do you feel about your draft spot, Mike?
I would trade Jen if we were allowed to do that right now. I like honestly, I like the top 4 this year. I like 3 and 4 particularly because I'm really high on Ezekiel Elliott. I can even get him at 5 sometimes, and that's what I'm looking for in the top 5. Don't own much Antonio Brown because I've been going running back when I've had a first half of a first-round pick. But at 8, I think I'll be between 2 players at that spot. Pretty guaranteed that they'll both be there for me, and we'll just see which way I go.
We're about 3 minutes away from the kickoff, and this should go smooth. By the way, we got Scott Fish in the draft room, so he can pause if we need it. That's very handy because undoubtedly I will screw up any number of times. So I guess, you know, as we sit here, just Mike, throw out some of your basic strategies, some your general approach.
Look, I think getting an anchor running back early is a big deal. I have not gone many drafts, over 120 drafts. I maybe once or twice have I not taken a running back in the first 2 rounds. You can pretty much count on me taking one in round 1 tonight. After that, you know, we both like elite tight ends, Bob. We've drafted a lot of Gronk, a lot of Kelsey. Not as much Ertz. I like that next level as well if you wait a few more rounds. And, you know, there are plenty of guys that I think are great flyers. This is a great format to take flyers on guys who may only have those 3 or 4 big games a year. And it's perfect because you don't have to guess when it's going to happen. We look, it's no secret, Bob. We talk about Dante Moncrief all the time. I don't know a prospective starting wide receiver that you can get later than Dante Moncrief right now on any team in the National Football League. And granted, he may not be a $1,200 100-yard guy, but if he has 3 or 4 100-yard games this year, they're probably going to count in your lineup, and it's great value. You get him in the 15th round or later. Maybe not.
Mike Beer's already stoked to start the draft. He'll have the overall pick. Jen, when you're picking first, who do you like in these? I'm sure you've been kind of diversifying, but who do you like best?
First overall?
Yeah, if you were there.
It's so hard. It's hard to say which one I like best because it really kind of I just spread it out so much. I really have a hard time picking between Gurley, David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, and really in some Antonio Brown. I think any 4 of those players could easily finish fantasy's #1 scorer. So it's tough between them. I'm going to say maybe I'd back off Gurley as the top scorer just because running backs don't typically put together 2 running back 1 finishes in fantasy. It hasn't happened in a while.
So you've drafted a fair amount with some of these people, Jen. What are you looking for from them? Anyone in particular?
I mean, I'm trying to anticipate what everyone's going to do just because from knowing people, interacting with people, drafting with people, you think you have it figured out, but you know how these things turn out. It's just different every time, especially we talked about it a little bit last night, these, industry drafts. It's fun to see where people take chances. ADP isn't so strict.
And Mike, drafting with me, how soon do you have to take Jerick McKinnon now?
Well, chances are I will not be taking it with the 5th pick of round 2. So that means I will not be getting Jerick McKinnon. I would just ask for the people selecting in the first 4 spots, if Bob tries to get sneaky and get him in round 3, do not allow that to happen because he's going to claim that he's been on McKinnon longer than me this offseason. He was 1B, but I'm 1A on Jerick McKinnon, although I will not take him in the 2nd round.
All right, we're about a minute away from the start of the draft, and just everyone out there who's watching, following along, we're kind of working our way into this with getting the draft displayed. Be a little patient. We actually have the first pick off, so the picks are going off. We'll get the draft board up here for you so you can follow along. Todd Gurley going first to Mike Beers, Casey Joyner taking Le'Veon Bell, Bobby Gomez going Antonio Brown, and the first round is on, basically.
Yeah, see, there's Ezekiel Elliott hanging out at 5. That's why I like the 5 spot. Somebody always takes Antonio Brown, it seems like, in the first 4 picks, and I would definitely take Elliott as the top 4 player this year.
All right, I'm going to try and bring
I like Antonio Brown there. I kind of like taking Antonio Brown at 4 a little bit over Zeke. I feel like sometimes in a lot of these I see AB fall maybe to 5 or 6, so I kind of like that he, I guess, faded that next running back.
I just got Ezekiel Elliott at 5, and give me a second here. I'm going to try and bring up this draft for everybody now.
He's got your guy, Mike.
All right, and that's why. Look, I knew he was going to fall to 8, but I like any of those running backs above Antonio Brown because I just think the value at receiver in the 2nd round in that range is so much greater than the value at running back. And again, I'm trying to start my team with at least 1 running back in the first couple rounds. So taking it there, I love that choice.
All right, so we are up and running. You got the draft board up. I hope everyone can see it well. Can you see it, Mike and Jen? Good enough?
It's tiny, but I see. I got like many screens going here, so I'm good.
All right.
I'm bouncing back and forth.
Hope the chatters can see it. So no real surprises. I guess Bobby Gomez going Antonio Brown 3rd. You could say that's a little bit of a surprise, but not huge, right?
I don't think it's a shock. It's not a bad pick whatsoever. It's just one that I wouldn't make, but you certainly could defend it in the top 5, no question.
Absolutely. We got the fantasy assassin. Brad Cruz, having drafted with him a number of times, I'm going to be surprised if he takes a quarterback before the last 2 rounds. That's kind of been his approach in every draft I've been in with him. And Mike Dempsey up now. So who do you like?
I really thought I'd have the choice of Saquon Barkley or Leonard Fournette here. I thought Kamara would go ahead of Barkley, but one of those guys would be available to me, and likely Fournette. But I've drafted Fournette a lot in my recent drafts, but I'm still going to take him here at this spot. I think, it's a team that wants to run the ball more than any team in the National Football League. I love the 12-pound weight loss. I think he's going to be quicker. He's going to benefit from that. He's already got the long speed. There's no question about his place in the offense, how many touches this guy is going to have. So I'll start with Leonard Fournette. You can call me a homer if you want to.
Homer? No, actually, I actually think, and Gary Davenport wasted no time going for Kareem Hunt. Not a huge surprise there. John Law coming up next with his pick, and he went immediately to DeAndre Hopkins. Mike, you and I talked about this on the show. earlier tonight, which wide receivers are going in the first round. I think this is about the spot where you see that too. Wouldn't be a total surprise if Odell Beckham went off either, right?
No, a lot of times Hopkins is gone. I mean, I don't see Hopkins on the board that often by this point.
There he goes. Emil Kadlick picks Odell Beckham.
And, when you're sitting there in 11, you got that luxury. You know you're going to get a pretty good running back on the way back here.
And Jen Ryan goes running back. Melvin Gordon, and now with her back-to-back pick, she's in a pretty good position to there
take
you go.
Julio Jones. Yes, to take Julio Jones.
So is that pretty much what you would have hoped for? Is this pretty much a best-case scenario for you, Jen?
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, I love Keenan Allen too, and I know that there's absolutely no way he's going to make it back to me. But it's a little aggressive to stack 2 Chargers this early, so that's why. I mean, you can't go wrong with Julio Jones. But hoping for that touchdown regression, you have to think he improves upon 3 touchdowns from this season.
Amen to not taking 2 players on the same team in the first 2 rounds.
No, you can't. You can't.
That's a pretty heavy investment there. And I guess, in general, I know Mike and I have some strategies. We'll see how it plays out. We both are not averse to drafting running backs or tight ends in this round. We'll see how that plays out if the table lays out. Jen, in general, when are you wanting to take a tight end?
Honestly, it depends. I mean, if I'm sitting there in the second round, middle of the second round, Gronk's sitting there. If I'm sitting there towards the end of the third, Kelsey's sitting there, maybe I take them early. I mean, lately I do find myself taking Greg Olsen pretty often, but if I'm missing out kind of on those guys, if I'm not taking a shot on Jimmy Graham, I'm definitely waiting and loading up on 3, maybe guys who are a little injury prone, a little risky, and you have the discount like Eifert, Clay, guys like that, Cook. I'll put them all on the same team.
It seems like Michael Thomas going off here, not a huge surprise, but how concerned are you, Mike Dempsey, about the run-heavy approach of last year maybe being an issue again? More weapons, it seems like, tight end, Ben Watson, the guy we like, bringing Cam Meredith. Any worries about Thomas for you?
It's not that I'm so worried about him. It's just that there are a handful of receivers I like better, and let me just thank Gary Davenport for taking LaShawn McCoy off the board right there and leaving me one of those receivers that I like better than Michael Thomas. That's Keenan Allen. Won't take me long to hit the trigger on that one. So we heard Elliot Harrison say tonight, Bob, on our show, he thinks about 105 receptions for Keenan Allen this year. He's as good a bet as anybody to lead the league in receptions, and with Hunter Henry out, I think he's just going to be absolute gold in the PPR league this year. Yeah,
I agree with you as well. So we got a couple 2 running back teams here, and a couple, and at least in 1 2 wide receiver team. I feel like this year there's enough depth in the draft to pull this off, whether you go running back, or receiver, or even one of those with a tight end. You guys tend to agree with that or no? Or
I haven't liked the few teams I've done running back to start, Jen. I haven't really loved them. I like getting at least one back that I'm really confident is going to be around 300 touches this year. So I've gone running back plenty. I've probably gone running back more than I've gone receiver in the first couple of rounds. So.
I'd say,
go ahead, Jen.
I'd say I have a little bit of that going on. I do think it's easier to stack positions per round towards the tail end of the round. I think it's a little harder to do at the top of the draft. If you're drafting first overall, I'm sure Mike is going to be fine either way, but let's say he went with 2 running backs. Now coming around, you might be looking at, in the 3rd round, Doug Baldwin, who's now hurt, maybe a Larry Fitzgerald, someone as your wide receiver 1 if you kick off 2 running backs. So I think towards the end of the round, it's a little easier to get away with it with value falling.
And
if Dalvin Cook, Bob, or Kareem Hunt had made it to my spot, unlikely that Hunt will in many drafts get out of the first round. But if Dalvin Cook slides to that spot, I would have taken him over Keenan Allen for sure.
Right, and we just had A.J. Green go off to the Hussein the Brain. That leaves me in a pretty good position because my actually number 5 receiver is sitting there waiting for me. So I'll go ahead and take him. Devontae Adams, the only wide receiver in the NFL to have back-to-back double-digit touchdown seasons. Plays with a guy named Darren Rodgers. I'm pretty enthused about my first 2 picks.
Yeah, had Gary taken Keenan Allen the way the board was at that point, I would have taken Devontae Adams with my 2nd round pick. So you can thank Gary Davenport for making him available to you there.
Yeah, he's very kind of him. Very kind of him.
I'm not trying to pick on Gary, but in all seriousness, I mean, isn't taking McCoy early in the second round way at the top of his range? I mean, he's almost going to have everything work out perfectly. Talking about a beat-up offensive line with 3 new starters coming in this year. Nobody's going to respect that passing game. I just don't see that value being returned on a pick that high.
Interesting. What do you think of this pick, Casey Joyner? We all know he's been doing the science. And Mike, yeah, if you could check your mic and see if you can lean in. You got a little fuzz on it, and it seems to be you're a little quiet.
Really? I'm quiet?
You're quiet. It's the most unusual thing ever. And here's so a couple interesting things. Bobby Gomez goes Rob Gronkowski, one of my favorite approaches. And then then Derrick Henry goes. And then we have our first 3 running back team, Mike Beers, who does this a fair amount. Again, in over 100 of these drafts is Mike. So, Jen, your thoughts on that start for him?
He knows what he's doing. He's cooking something up, I feel like, in almost every single draft he's in. I mean, but look at his team. Gurley, Howard, McKinnon. Pretty amazing start. I can't wait to see what receiver he takes.
Right, and then we have that followed up with T.Y. Hilton. Then our first quarterback in round 3 to Bobby Gomez. Deshaun Watson is the first quarterback off the board. What are we going to do about this?
Let him have him. Hopefully several more will go.
Right.
I mean,
I'm not touching the QB anytime soon. I'll tell you that.
Right.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if he's the top quarterback, then Bobby's a genius, right? I mean, at the end, I guess ADP kind of doesn't matter.
So the clock has come back around to me again. I might go with the balanced approach, not afraid to take the tight ends early, have a strong running back, a very solid wide receiver, and one of my top 2 tight ends. Pretty pleased with Elliott, Adams, and Kelsey.
Yeah, Bob, I feel like your first 3 picks are like a lock for 35 touchdowns, baby. I mean, that's a pretty good start.
Joe Mixon goes.
Kelsey would not made it by me, that's for sure.
I had a pretty good idea of that. All right, looking for some questions out in the crowd to see what the talk is. In some surprise at Watson going as early. Bobby Gomez, as you all know, the Millionaire Maker DraftKings Millionaire Maker $1 million winner. So obviously does a lot of roster construction in daily. I'm not sure how much best ball. But look, you got to have a quarterback. None of us are going to be drafting a quarterback. How early are you going to draft a quarterback, Jen? What's likely the earliest?
So right now, because I'm seeing them kind of fall a little bit, I'm taking Cam, Drew Brees, those guys in the 7th, 8th round. I'm starting to move that in and mix that into my drafting. But usually after that, I kind of stick to the double-digit rounds. I've only recently been taking those guys earlier, and I've taken a few shots on Aaron Rodgers when I see him in the 5th round too.
And there goes Mike Dempsey taking Tyreek Hill. So Mike has 1 running back, 2 receivers, Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill. Doug Baldwin goes off. A little worries about Baldwin with the knee injury. Sounds like he'll be back week 1. How much do you think that'll change his ADP over the coming days as we get closer to the season and he hasn't been on the field?
I think it's got to slide him down a little bit. And apologies if my mic's low. I got this thing cranked up as high as possible. But I think look, if the guy's not going to play at all in the preseason, I do think that it's going to impact him. I would see Doug Baldwin probably going off the board in the 4th round in a lot of fantasy drafts in August.
Ken?
Yeah, the thing with Baldwin is I hate when these things come up in camp. Why didn't we hear about this sooner? You know, it's alarming. I am very invested, just kind of hoping that it's something that Pete Carroll's being overcautious about.
Yeah, getting a lot of comments in the chat about Mike going the 3 running backs early. Look, if you know what Mike Beers does, runs a site called Best Ball Command Center. He has access to millions of best ball picks so far this season. So I think, for me, I want a little more balance. I'm always going for some balance to some degree. I mean, I'm not afraid to stick with, the same position if need be. But I want a little more balance. But there is something to this. I find there's a great deal of depth later on, especially at wide receiver. So there is something to be said for getting your running backs early.
Oh, yeah, no question.
There we go.
I'm usually not that aggressive to go with 3 of the first 3 picks. But I've plenty of times gone in that one spot, gone with 2 and an elite tight end, and waited on wide receiver till late round 4. So I'm with you on that.
All right, we got 3 receivers down there on the end, Jen Ryan. Talk a little bit about that.
So I was really, really torn. Picking in this spot could be a little bit tough because I have to try to anticipate who's going to be there in, 21, 22 picks from now. There was no running back that I really loved here. I like Fitzgerald a lot here. I don't have enough Amari Cooper shares. I can't believe we're still kind of getting him where we can get him if he has the season that we expect. Again, this wasn't really the plan. I'm kind of trying to let the draft come to me. I just wasn't comfortable taking Drake there or Ingram, so I went with these guys.
So let's talk a little bit about that, about, following your plan versus being ready to deviate from your plan, which is, the Professor Mike Tyson theory. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the nose. In the draft, you get punched in the nose a ton.
Yeah, of course. So, I feel like I like to go into drafts thinking I have a plan, and my plan is to be flexible and let the draft come to me and keep conscious of my exposure at this point in the year so that I don't overexpose in too many areas. It's like my plan is to not really have a plan and just kind of go with it, hopefully in the correct way.
Some interesting plays. I like this start here for John Lobb, Gridiron Scholar. Got 2 high-end wide receivers, a rookie running back. The news today that maybe Chris Thompson won't be his full health until November. That makes how much more interesting does that make Geis right now?
Very.
Exactly. I mean,
look, I don't think he replaces all of Chris Thompson's receptions, but there'll be a few where they keep him on. You also saw that report from Washington. And by the way, I never take Zach Ertz, but I'm about to take him in round 4 here and see what happens.
Good.
Anyway, the report out of Washington said that they thought he was a candidate to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
Yes.
A little bit aggressive. I mean, even they didn't select him in the first round, but it does tell you what they feel about Darius Geis's ability. I mean, the guy has been phenomenal, just as a pure runner. We'll see how involved he can be in a passing game, but you're talking late 3rd, early 4th round now on Geis. I think that's fine value.
So here's something as I head into this pick that I see a lot when I start with this balanced approach. When I go running back, receiver, tight end, I got 3 guys I love. All of a sudden, I'm facing a handful of guys I don't really like. I don't really like anybody here. And that presents a little bit of a conundrum. So I think I like some of the running back value later a little bit better than I like what I'm seeing here. Maybe I go for just a steady Eddie play, a guy that I think is going to catch a lot of balls, or maybe a guy with a mixed upside. I think I'll go with Demaryius Thomas here, and reporting, Case Keenum looking very good. I think it's always better to have. Well, I guess I'm not up yet. I'm still waiting.
Close enough.
I thought the pick. Oh, there we go. Aaron Rodgers went. All right. Fair enough.
That's what I was setting up there with you. I don't like anybody. I'll take a quarterback.
Right. That is usually my thing, but it's too early to do that. And maybe I should have done it if Aaron Rodgers would have been there. But I'm going to go ahead and go with my original pick. Look, there's a lot of number 1 receivers here right now. Allen Robinson, a little worried about some of the reporting of how inconsistent Mitchell Trubisky has been. So Josh Gordon obviously concerned. Alshon Jeffrey coming off the shoulder injury. I'm going to go ahead and get one of my first shares of Demaryius Thomas here. What do you guys think? Was that crazy?
No, I love Demaryius there. Mike?
No, I thought about him at my pick instead of taking Ertz, but it's one of those, I don't draft for this is the one draft that is going to tell all. I've got over 120 of these in the books, so I like to diversify a little bit. I haven't been in position to get Zach Ertz that late in round 4. He's usually, I see him off the board late round 3, typically, so I thought, I'll give it a shot. Oftentimes in the first 4 rounds, I've dedicated a spot to a tight end, but had I not, Demaryius Thomas might have been my next pick.
Yeah, but James in the draft, he mentioned Thomas's floor, and it's so true. If you take out last season, his 5 seasons before that, he was well over 1,000 yards each season. I think over 45 touchdowns, like a ton of touchdowns. You take out last year, high floor, and he's got a very obvious upgrade.
And you know what I say, when you have 3 quarterbacks, you don't have any quarterbacks. And
it's true.
And that, now he has one quarterback. I do like that. And it seems like for a guy that we're perennially talking about bounce back seasons, we're talking about bouncing back from like 900-yard seasons or just 1,000 yards or like that. So interested to see what Mike Beers does here. Has the 3 receivers. I'm guessing he's going to go another way. And there he goes. Look, Golden Tate is a guy that I think if you do this kind of start, he was a guy I considered there. He is what, especially in point per receptions, such a steady Eddie. 4 straight seasons, including the last 3 in Detroit with at least 90 catches. Seems like a pretty safe play, right?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Seems pretty reasonable. Right now, I'll be honest with you, I'm just a little bit taken with the Will Fuller pick in round 4. That seems a little bit aggressive to me.
Yeah, Bobby Gomez is doing, some unique strategies. I don't know, maybe because he doesn't play in a lot of best balls. Maybe we're seeing some carrying over DFS, strategies. I know Mike Beers commented in the draft chat that's the lowest Deshaun Watson has gone in any MFL 10 this year, or the highest, I should say.
The highest,
yeah.
I wouldn't doubt that might be the highest Will Fuller's ever gone in an MFL 10 this year. Honestly, I mean, I question, is he worth it in the 6th round a lot of times because he's so volatile, and I don't know if we can expect the production. 7 touchdowns in a 4-game stretch last year. We'll see if defenses make adjustments. I still love Watson this year. I like Fuller, and I like the hookup in best ball, but not at that price. Great point by Dennis Roy here. Bobby Gomez going for the high upside throw.
He really is, though. He is. I mean, and you know what? Good for Bobby on that because you either want to finish first or last, right? So it's not he's going straight ceiling. Bit of a GPP approach, which won him a nice chunk of change in the past. So, well, it's a different approach, but it's an exciting approach.
A lot of comments. My Thomas pick being pretty roundly criticized here. Has not been a factor since Peyton retired. I don't know, define non-factor, I would say. He's been a factor, but it's a good point. Hasn't had a quarterback. Juju Smith-Schuster comes off here. He's been going earlier than I'm comfortable with. I don't have a lot of him. How do you guys feel about Schuster and where he's been going? Mike?
Schuster, I feel better about Schuster than I would Will Fuller, to be honest with you. Just straight up, but I'm with you. 5th round, I'm like, all right, are we getting a little bit over-aggressive on Juju here? But that is an offense that is prolific enough that I think can support a 3rd option, particularly in the passing game. Obviously, Bell and Antonio Brown, the top 2 guys. He's going to see single coverage every single time out there, you would think. And, again, in a best ball format, he's going to pop. We saw him pop for some monster games last year. So I don't hate the pick in the 5th round. And that's pretty much where you've got to spend a pick if you want to get him here.
I'm going to go quick and try and get in under the wire. There I go. Going the other way. I'm going to wait a little later on running back. Look at the running backs. Rashad Penny sitting there. Maybe before today I would have jumped all over him. Maybe not. What do we make of all this talk? And I had my talk earlier. Don't go overboard on the news. But there's been a little bit of trend with Chris Carson, right?
A lot of reporting. You're hearing from multiple people the same thing. Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. They're not making it up. They're seeing something with their own eyes. However, you don't invest a 1st-round pick and talk about Rashad Penny as being a 3-down back and plan to leave him on the bench. I just wonder if he's going to return 4th-round value if he needs to work his way into that role over, say, the first 6 weeks of the season.
We're going to find out. I have attended. There's some running backs I like late. I'm going to be in a deficit here. I have 1 running back, 3 receivers, a tight end. I'm going to be playing catch up a little bit at the running back position. Not always the easiest thing to do, but I think, it's no secret there are still some starters out there that I've had no problem drafting. I'm pretty heavily invested in Isaiah Crowell at the right price. I'm pretty heavily invested in Marshawn Lynch. And again, it's part of this is just opportunities. I think these guys are going to get a number of chances, and I don't know what they'll do with them. But Marshawn Lynch was pretty good down the stretch last year. He ran hard, and Crowell seems to be in a good spot to get opportunities. But there's no doubt I'm going to be scrambling here at running back.
Yeah, I saw comment here, Chris Rito, in the chat. Wonder what kind of targets Landry will get this year. That position in his offense has not gotten more than 75 targets a year. A, this offense is now led by Todd Haley. B, they traded for Landry and they gave him $16 million a year. C, who knows if Josh Gordon's showing up at all, if anytime soon. I think Landry is going to be a target monster just like he was in Miami, maybe to a slightly lesser degree, but he's going to sail past 100 targets easily this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, Haley, one of them. Go ahead, Jen.
So I was going to say, he's been so consistent in fantasy, and I just can't believe, especially over the last 3 years, he's been so consistent wide receiver 1 numbers. And the fact that he goes where he goes, it's so hard not to be overexposed, at least for me, to Jarvis Landry at this point. I have so many shares, and it's just because he's there, and I just can't pass on him at some point.
Yeah, Todd Haley, obviously very pass heavy. In Pittsburgh, they have a lot of quarterbacks, and they've added some receiving talent. Cleveland, we're hoping for a little more of the same. So as we sit here, heading into round, 6? I think between me and I think I'm probably the most unbalanced, and normally I go for some balance. Jen's a little bit unbalanced at this point. I'm guessing you're about to rectify that, right?
I almost timed out, and we were just talking about Penny and his draft stock. I went with Sony Michel, first-round pick for the Patriots. Hate Patriots running backs, but I went for it. I almost timed out. I was paying attention to you guys, and
I almost timed out on my Landry.
We were trying to distract you.
Yeah, I see that strategy.
A little bit.
And I'm going to take a shot on Tevin Coleman here because despite being the 1B or even the 2 to Devontae Freeman, he still seems to have those weeks, and those are really great in this format.
So Antonio Salentino commented on my picks in the chat. Running back is the most important position to draft early. You can get plenty of wide receivers late. Love Beer's strategy. I don't disagree. We can't trade any of these running backs. We can't trade anyone in best ball. So that's just to put the point on that. And maybe it would be good to run through the best ball rules in case people don't know it. This is a set and forget league. So you draft and your lineup is figured out for you each week based on your best scores. So you don't necessarily have to get guys that are going to have great output every week because you don't have to decide. So it's a little easier to get running backs later that are maybe going to spike at times because you don't have to predict when. A classic best ball play is a guy like Ted Ginn in recent years, a guy that's going to have some big games on occasion. Good luck picking when. So, look, you need some solid floor guys. You need those same guys you need in regular season long, but you do have a little more leeway and liberty in this one.
Oh,
right,
absolutely.
and I get right. Antonio's commenting. He's talking about the redraft. Just so we're clear, this is a little safer in best ball. It's not safe, just safer.
Exactly. Yeah, these are all. We're starting to get to the point. I feel like in the draft where I feel like once you get out of those first 4 rounds. For me, at least, that's when I start kind of taking maybe a little bit of risk, especially in a draft like this. There's no guarantee that Tevin Coleman would have made it back to me. He likely wouldn't have. So I kind of, I have to take that into consideration as well.
And if we talk about unbalanced, I look at Bobby Gomez's roster, and I'm thinking, interesting. Anyone else?
Bobby's.
Let me bring it up.
I do have to refresh every now and again. Yeah, he's missing that running back. He's missing that running back, but let's see who's on the board right now and who potentially could. Carlos Hyde, if Carlos Hyde falls to him, and he becomes the guy who dominates the touches for Cleveland, then he grabbed his RB1 down in the 6th round.
Oh yeah.
Somebody just asked a question: how we feel about handcuffing running backs in best ball. I'm a big fan of doing it. You got 20 roster spots, and if your guy goes down, you can't go to the waiver wire to pick somebody up. Look, there's value in taking shots on guys that could emerge on other teams, but if I'm going to invest in the first couple rounds in a back, and I've got the opportunity at a good price to get what I feel is a clear handcuff, I would absolutely try to handcuff the top running back.
Right, I tend not to handcuff so much in best ball, and look, I think we could all agree. You need a true plug and play guy, And that can be a little harder to get in best ball because other people are more likely to take your handcuff later, and you're not getting the same kind of discount you'd like to get on a handcuff in this format.
Yeah, I mean, for me, handcuffing, it really depends on which running back we're talking about. I'm not handcuffing Le'Veon Bell. If Le'Veon Bell were to miss time, I don't believe James Conner just steps into that role, or anybody else on the depth chart. Am I going to handcuff Dalvin Cook? Yeah, I might take Latavius Murray, later on in the draft. It really depends on which running back we're talking about for me.
So I'm going to go Marshawn Lynch very early. That gives me two plotting ground-based guys. I'm not calling Ezekiel Elliott plotting, but not great receivers. But again, I just want guys that I know they're going to be on the field early. I know a lot of people are worried about Doug Martin. There's a lot of chatter about him. I would suggest you go back and look at Marshawn Lynch's numbers down the stretch last season. He was one of the best backs, one of the most productive backs in the NFL. So I'm kind of hoping for some more of that. I remember John Gruden last time he was coaching say something about pounding rocks. I don't know. Hoping for the best.
Sixth round, you might be pounding rocks yourself, I think.
I might be. No, there's no doubt. I'm scrambling a little bit here. I just don't want one of the satellite receivers just yet. I want a pretty firm playing time guy, and I think that's going to be him. Hoping that's going to be him. As we move in here, I'm just curious to see who Bobby's going to get here. And I'm guessing he's going to go running back soon. Nice Chris Hogan pick. That's a pretty good price on Chris Hogan right now. And Bobby Gomez goes Carlos Hyde. Okay, so let's talk.
I thought QT might have been his pick there. No.
Let's talk a little bit about Hyde and some of these situations. Like I wanted to avoid this situation. I wanted to avoid Green Bay's situation. I want to try to avoid situations where there's two guys fighting for one role, that early down role, and there's also a third down, a satellite back, like in Cleveland case, you've got Chubb, Hyde, and Duke Johnson. In those three-way splits, I'm kind of trying to ignore the first two guys.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, right. Because you might miss out completely, but the third guy, at least has a pretty, at least a decent floor of value.
Yeah.
And you usually say that you like the cheapest guy in the committee, and typically I do too, but for me, not in this committee. I think I like Duke out of the three to return value on his ADP.
Right, and some of the comments, avoid the Indy RBs. That's another situation. Look, I don't think you need to avoid them. I just think you need to pay for the right guy, and it's the same situation in Indy for me as it is with Green Bay. I prefer Montgomery. In Cleveland, I'm going to want Duke Johnson. I mean, I think these are all similar situations. We're going to go cheap on the Indy guys, and hopefully someone else dives in on Marlon Mack ahead of me, and that makes perfect sense. Just trying to look and get an overall feel. I'm looking at Emo's board, 4 wide receivers, 2 running backs, Julian Edelman. We've seen the 2 suspended guys. We saw Ingram go off fairly early, I thought. Where did he go off? Round 3, 4?
I want to say
round 4.
Maybe was it 4 or 5? I think he went right after.
It was round 4.
Was it?
Or no?
I think it was 5.
None of us can find him.
I find him, but I just can't count
them. Round 5.
Yeah.
There you go.
It was Gary. Gary's saying 4, but whatever the case. Anyway, what do you guys think about the suspended guys? Where is the right place to go for a Julian Edelman or a Mark Ingram?
Guess you'll find out. Ingram's gone. I think you get 4th round is where he went here. I think people are willing to wait out a month and see if the Saints try to run the tires off the guy because he's likely not coming back to New Orleans next year. And Edelman is, more of like a 6th or 7th round guy, I think, now, because he's still going to be a high-volume receiver when he gets back. And you can certainly make it through a month, best ball with a hodgepodge of bench receivers filling in.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna get them, much more outside of that. I got so distracted, guys, because I'm looking at over these teams, and I noticed that our friend Mike Beers that we always talk about, he stacked the Detroit receivers, and I think that's a pretty interesting way to go. I'm sorry to get off track. I was just looking at over all the teams and the compositions of them, and I feel like that's pretty interesting early on in the draft.
Yeah, I see Bob Harris is auto picking. Or is that Bobby Gomez, I think, maybe? that on our Nobody is getting auto-selected in round 7, thank goodness.
No,
I hope not. I hope
too
not.
soon for that. Way too soon for that.
All right, so Russell Wilson goes off round 7. Again, Mike Beers, a guy who has a ton of experience in this. Interesting pick for him. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, yeah. Look, I mean, you know Russell Wilson's got some built-in floor with the running ability, but, man, it's looking a little bit shaky the entirety of the offense up there, right? I mean, you've got your number one guy who's maybe out until the beginning of the season, and who do you have proven behind that? Tyler Lockett's an injury waiting to happen, or at least he has been. Brandon Marshall, I mean, you know, they lose Jimmy Graham. The offensive line is shaky. I don't have a problem. In this range, you're getting a decent value in the 7th round on Russell Wilson, but I've seen him go really high in a lot of drafts based on the fact that he was the number 1 QB last year, and I don't think he's going to repeat in 2018. Let's put it that way.
Couple thoughts from the chatters. Chris Rito mentions that it's a little surprising in this format that Josh Gordon is still there. It shows a great.
He's gone.
Is he gone?
He went the
I must.
Yep.
All right, fair enough. Another comment. Someone commenting they think Russell Wilson struggles early out of the gate. Emmanuel Sanders undervalued. What's the arguments for and against him?
I'm for him. I love it. He's always managed to put up pretty high-end wide receiver 2 numbers next to Thomas with a competent quarterback. I think they're going to have that this year. And really his ADP, I think, is an argument for him. I can't really say I have many arguments against him, not at his cost.
Mike?
Who are we talking about again? I'm sorry.
Emmanuel Sanders.
Oh, yeah, Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, look, I guess the argument for him is he's done it, right? He's been a 1,000-yard type receiver, and you know, when you get him in the middle rounds, he's certainly gone off before that in years past. But you know, you hear pretty good things about him getting his quickness back, looking okay in camp so far. But you do have a guy in Case Keenum, even though he's an upgrade over what they had. It's not like they've got Peyton Manning circa 2015 or whatever year that was that he was lighting up the scoreboard. I mean, you get into this range, I think everybody comes with some degree of risk. Emmanuel Sanders' spot should be pretty safe in terms of being a season-long wide receiver 2 for the Denver Broncos. It should be a pretty decent offense overall. I think it's an okay pick, not one that excites me in round 7.
Yeah, I'm with you. 4 Browns already taken inside of 7 rounds.
Who's 4 Browns? Yeah. It's
4 Cleveland Browns.
New era.
Somewhere Gary Davenport is going. And here goes Jersey Jen over here on the side. Delaney Walker. Cam Newton, Jen. What do we think about Cam under Norv Turner?
Stuck them in. Cam under Norv Turner, I'm all for it. Norv's, he's been in the league for a little while. He knows what he's doing. Cam, coordinator or not, really what you have to love about him is his own personal goal line usage and really his legs. He's been a top 5 quarterback more seasons than he hasn't been, and he's pretty consistent at it. Again, recently I've been starting to take guys like him and Drew Brees around here, so I'm very happy to have Cam in the 8th round. And really, depending upon who my QB2 is, I might feel comfortable going with just 2 quarterbacks in this draft.
Looking at the last 2 receivers, Nelson Aguilar. We've had some concerns about him. We've talked about him some, Mike. I think this is a little early for him. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I mean, early on this summer, I was taking him pretty steadily around the 8th round, as a wide receiver 3 or 4, depending on how my team was stacked. I like him this year, but I think it is a team that will spread the ball around. You got Ertz, you got Jeffrey, you had Mike Wallace in the mix, who I think will be an upgrade there with Torrey Smith. You got all those running backs, and a lot of them can catch passes. But I think he was pretty good last year. If he gives us the return he gave us last year, I think the 8th round, it's about the right range for him.
Right, I'm with you. Interesting, some questions about some of the guys who aren't going. I know that people are listening. I think one of the things that I worry about is giving picks away. But I do want to mention, Wentz seems to be well on track towards, being ready week 1. We talked to some people this week who have really high hopes for him. Where do you stand on Wentz, Mike?
I guess there are probably at least a half dozen I like before him. In the instances I've gotten Wentz, I got him like the 10th round. Now, keep in mind, we've been drafted, Bob and I, and Jen as well, since well before the NFL draft. right? So you're taking a lot of speculative picks. Guys' stocks rise and fall. He was outstanding last year. I think when you get in this range, you take Wentz as your number one guy. You can come back. There are plenty of safe quarterbacks to pair him with. You could draft 3 quarterbacks. I don't think it's that big of a deal, even if he's not 100% the first few weeks of the season. He's a guy, out of all the guys left, there are not many more that you can say have top 3 quarterback upside.
So I'm going to go Isaiah Crowell a little earlier. I talked about those 2 guys. They're guys that I find comfortable. I'd like to see what the chatters think. Look, they're not sexy Marshawn Lynch, Isaiah Crowell. But you're in a New York offense that's going to maybe have a rookie quarterback. Both of those guys capable at the goal line. Crowell may be a better receiver than he's given credit for. So I kind of forced myself in a position to reach, though, I think. Your thoughts there on that, Jen?
You wanted your guy, and you went for him. And really, I'm high on Crowell this year. And I know a lot of us in the fantasy community, we were very high on Crowell last year. It didn't fully work out. But I love the change of scenery. You have Powell behind him, of course, but he's always been injury prone. Now you had Elijah McGuire. He went down. I mean, Crowell, physically, he could be looking at, 15 touches a game. And, he pounds the ball a little bit. He's not, he's going to have the volume, probably has the goal line. I like the change of scenery for Crowell, like I said, and I think it's a pretty good grab there as your 4th running back in the 8th round.
Yeah, and there goes Carson Wentz, the guy we were talking about. KC was the guy I was talking to yesterday who has him rated as one of his top 4 in that top tier. So I kind of was thinking that this might be the area where he would go. Had some chatters talking about it. Des Bryant goes no real, I think this is
I don't know who
again.
Yes,
you do. And here we go with Kyle Rudolph. Now, Kyle Rudolph to me is the first guy I'm looking for if I miss out on the top 3. There are other guys I'm fine with, but Rudolph is that first one. You guys feel kind of the same if you miss out on the top tier? I mean, Walker is kind of in a tier of his own in the middle, Jen, I know, but it's between him and Rudolph for me.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. And look, I mean, Rudolph, he's another guy who gets no respect. I think he's the 8th tight end off the board. Mike probably got him at his floor at this point. But yeah, it's definitely close. It's so close for them, but it's pretty impressive because when you look at Rudolph, he could easily finish ahead of Ingram, Graham, Walker, and maybe Ertz. Who knows?
He could. I like Greg Olsen definitely better than him, and I probably like Jimmy Graham better than him as well. I mean, Ingram at his price right now, I don't like necessarily better than where you can get Kyle Rudolph. But I'm just talking about who I expect to score more points. You're giving them to me at the same value. I'd rather have Olsen or Graham than Kyle Rudolph.
Higher ceilings. I mean, Olsen, PPR, and Graham, obviously the touchdowns.
I just think a mouse to feed in that Minnesota offense,
Mm-hmm.
We're moving along at a pretty good clip here. This, if you go to NFL 10s, and everyone, thanks to Scott Fish, who is in here in the draft, making sure none of us have any terrible disasters. Thanks to him. Thanks to Fanball. Thanks to NFL 10 site for doing this. I play almost all of my drafts are NFL 10s. I play on Draft as well. There are a number of sites you can play. Jen, anywhere else you like to play, or any, just kind of throw out some of the other places that you've had some that you find useful.
For best ball, I mean,
yeah.
Scott knows, and I think the team at MFL knows. My heart is with them. This is where, for sure, most of my money goes. I do get on Draft every now and then. Draft has a great interface. Love the app. I'm such a point hog that I just like the full PPR a little bit. I lean towards that a little more over the half PPR in Draft.
I just went Robbie Anderson here. I feel like Mike and I both like him as an upside guy. It's possible he'll miss some time. So that's a little bit of a concern, but that upside is there down the stretch, right? We saw him last year, a top 20 wide receiver. I know you like him, Mike. What do you think, Jen?
I think I like Robbie Anderson, but I think I like Quincy Enunwa at his ADP way more. I have a lot of Quincy Enunwa, and I think people forget how good he was before his neck injury, and all indications are he's healthy, he's ready to go. He's a big body. It seems like they're using him in the slot. I'm really excited for Enunwa this season. He's so cheap.
Pierre Garçon, Dante Moncrief, Quincy Enunwa, my 3 highest owned shares in wide receiver. I tend to agree with that, but Anderson's growing on me. Perhaps because I have so much Enunwa already. And then the recent reporting that maybe Jermaine Kearse is going to be the guy that we see a little more of in that number 2 spot. I don't know that I'm buying into it, but it maybe put me off a little bit, maybe more than it should have. Just had Trey Burton go off the board. I think this is round 9. That's about where you have to pay, right? It's a little bit of a risk, Mike.
I've seen him go earlier. So
yep.
I think right at this point, as much hype as you've seen about the Bears offense this offseason, you get Trey Burton in round 9, you feel like you've gotten a decent value on him, I think.
And he's followed by Jordan Reed, a guy I'm usually getting about a round later in the drafts I've been in, but this is about the spot for him. The news that he is healthy and he removed those troublesome bones from his toes, much like chickens who take the bones out of their breast or whatever to make it better for us. He has taken the bones from his toes. How enthused are we about that?
I probably would have taken Reed there because I will go back to – I'll go 2 tight ends before a lot of people even take 1 off the board. But now that he's gone, I'm going to make a pick. You want to talk about looking down the drinking straw, Harris? I'm going to make a pick that I would never really make. But what the hell? It's the 9th round. I'm going to try Chris Carson here in round 9.
Controversial. I love it.
So this is good. Look, the buzz has been undeniable. Brady Henderson from ESPN Nation, they put out their bold predictions today, right? They laid them out as bold predictions, but his prediction is Carson is the week 1 starter. Jen, how are you feeling about that?
Truthfully, the way I'm feeling about it is I love the reactions to news and to camp reports. I mean, it's as soon as something happens, you see ADP move. And it's fun to watch. But, Mike, a few weeks ago, even that pick for Carson there wasn't that crazy. It's just fun to see the reaction to everything with the news. But it's knocking Penny down slightly. So there's a lot going on in that backfield.
There goes George Kittle, a little higher than we normally see him. Let's put this in a little bit of context, though, for Mike Dempsey, right? Mike is in 120. This is your 123rd, 122nd?
Like 130th, maybe.
130, yeah, 130 best balls. Yes. So you have the ability to take these kind of chances in leagues when you're in this many. I'm heading for the 20 mark. I mean, I'm not Mike Dempsey. I'm not Jen Ryan. I'm not Mike Beers, also in the triple digits. So these guys, and it gives you a little bit of a sense of freedom to make some of these moves, take some chances on some of these rosters, because why not? You got 100+ chances. Mike, how many are you going to have when you're done?
150 probably. That's my goal for this year. I did 100 last year. You got to finish. If you win 10%, you break even, basically, right? So I won 13% last year and then finished second in another 17%. So 30% top 2 finish, either getting a free entry, a free league, or winning $100. I came out ahead a little bit, try to increase those percentages this year.
Jen, you were on the clock there.
Oh no, I'm so sorry about that. I'm so sorry, but you know what? That's fine. I can work with those picks. I'm sorry, guys. I was watching the stream.
I hear you. It happens. We're all a little bit.
I'm done looking at you guys. I'm just gonna look at the draft. Someone threw out Cousins before Rivers or Stafford. I think that's the kind of play you can make, right? That's something because of ADP. People are waiting a little longer on the other guys. I agree. I like Rivers. I like Stafford. But if you want Cousins, you have to go earlier, correct?
Little bit, right? And I don't know how much really divides all those guys right there. I've been drafting more top 6 quarterbacks this year than anything, than in the past. And obviously, there are plenty of options with who to pair those guys with. But I for whatever reason, haven't ended up with many shares of Kirk Cousins or Matt Stafford this year. Not, particularly avoiding them. Just seems like there's always somebody I want a little bit more when it's time to pick my second QB.
That makes perfect sense. I guess,
Am I on the clock here? Is this me? I think it is, right? Or is that not?
It is you. You got 45 seconds.
Don't let that happen to you. It happened to me.
All right, I'm gonna reach unless I just missed the guy.
You just reached the pick before, Mike Dempsey.
I'm gonna reach again, but I think this one's gonna pay off. As I think he will end up. Hang on, where'd he go? There he is. He's a little down. He might have made it back to me. I'm taking Allen Hurns here. I think he's clearly going to be the number 1 wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys this year. And with a full season of Ezekiel Elliott, you're going to see a lot of stack boxes in Dallas again. I think, again, as you're talking about wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 type range where he's coming off the board, I think easy 70 catches for Allen Hurns if he's healthy, and he's been 1,000-yard and a 10-touchdown receiver in the past. I think he's the best bet to hit either one of those marks with the Cowboys this year.
In one of the most shocking developments I've seen so far, Brad Cruz goes with a quarterback before the 17th round of a draft. I'm very impressed with that. And there are some interesting picks. I think I'm on the clock or damn near on the clock, so I'm going to get ready to make my pick. But I'd like you guys to talk about Emel's draft. If you could take a quick look at that, I think it's interesting.
All right, let me take a gander. Jen, jump in if you see something here.
Yeah, I don't want to lose my spot. I'm so nervous. All right. Okay, yeah. So Emil went and he stacked Cousins, who I think we can agree probably a high floor quarterback, and then went with Mahomes on the turn. Definitely a high ceiling kind of guy. Still waiting on that running back, it looks like. I'm very curious to see who he's going to take here. I would imagine maybe some pass-catching backs, but definitely have to look for someone who could potentially carry the load for the season. I mean, he could even maybe wait a couple more rounds and go for a Peyton Barber type and hope that that's the guy.
I might just Latavius Murray just to snake him next round. I don't know.
yeah, that's it.
It seems like we're in a little bit of a quarterback run, so I went ahead and jumped in.
A little bit.
Very happy with to wade in the rivers. Great supporting cast. Not any tight ends, but I think he'll be fine without them. Matt Ryan follows. He was a guy I might have considered as well. What do you guys think about the chances of Ryan having a bounce-back season? Maybe not the MVP levels, but we saw the second year under Kyle Shanahan was his MVP year. This is his second year under Sarkisian. Maybe something to that?
Oh, yeah. I think Matt Ryan could have absolutely a bounce-back season. He's got weapons. They invested in the passing game again. He's got 2 very good pass-catching backs. Only thing he doesn't really have is a prolific tight end, but you can't have everything. I mean, look, I don't think we're ever going to see Matt Ryan of his MVP season again, but I think he can split the difference between where he was over the last couple of years. And at this point in the draft, I definitely take that.
Yeah, and the quarterbacks are flying off. This is about as early as I've seen this kind of mass of quarterbacks go off, certainly in an industry draft, right?
We could argue my auto pick started the run a little bit.
I blame Jen Ryan.
Well, look, I mean, you got to be adaptive to what's happening, right? I mean, we all want to wait on quarterbacks, and a lot of us have, but when you start to see them coming off and people are doubling up now, you got to jump in the pool at some point. So if everyone else is doing it, it's not a reach to go in to the quarterback pool, even if you're one who typically waits a little bit longer. You got to be reactive to what's happening in front of you.
Looking at Mike Beers now, started out running back heavy, been running back quiet since round 3. What do you guys think of how his lineup is looking? Jen, what do you think?
If you've ever read Mike's Hyper Fragile article, I highly recommend you read it. It was a super popular article last season. It writes all about the win rates of hitting on your first 3 running backs, just drafting 3 running backs, and swinging for the fences everywhere else. And it had a ridiculous win rate. Risky, but if it works, it works. And he's kind of doing that a little bit. He kind of went with that approach. I'm sure he's going to add another back or 2, but Mike goes for first or last, and that's what you need in this format. Nobody cares if you come in 3rd or 11th.
Yeah, Jim Day mentioned he loves Eli Manning as a quarterback too. I think you look at Eli Manning, and if we think all these guys are going to have great seasons, Odell Beckham's going to be great. Saquon Barkley's going to be great. Sterling Shepard's going to be great. Evan Ingram's going to be great. Someone's giving them the ball, right? How much do we pay attention to that? Jen, I know when you set out your projections, you're probably noticing these things. Do you target these guys, maybe be willing to jump up a little higher on them?
Sure. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you bring up such a good point about them, too. Like if we're high on Barkley, Beckham, Ingram, Shepard, how are we not a little bit high on Eli? I do think Ingram's being drafted, I think, for sure at his ceiling. I think so, too. Curious. Well, it's curious to see what he's going to do with Odell Beckham on the field. I mean, keep in mind, he put up insane numbers, but Odell Beckham was on the sideline. So it's a little risky there. But I think Eli is a QB too. I mean, really, depending upon how you play it and where you're drafting, Eli maybe even as a QB1 might work out for you.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm on the clock here. So go ahead, chat, you guys. I'm going to
I think you're right, Jen. Eli, I mean, look, all these guys, that's the beauty of best ball, too. You don't have to wonder. You know, you hate when you draft two quarterbacks and they both outperform. At least I do sometimes in a redraft, because I think it's tough to trade quarterbacks in a redraft league, because usually everybody
totally.
Right? So you can always grab one off the wire. But in a best ball, the guy you draft second or even your third quarterback can turn out to be your most productive one. He might appear in more lineups for you. Maybe he's one of these wildly fluctuating players, but who cares? You almost prefer that, I think, in this format.
Absolutely. And in redraft, it's tough because there's nothing worse than seeing your bench quarterback outscore your starting quarterback. So maybe you're like me, maybe you just take one quarterback in redraft and either stream or ride it. But that's why it's so great in best ball. Eli's tough in redraft. It's pretty good in this format.
So now that I've had, I went ahead and I got Travis Kelce. I went ahead and got Tyler Eifert. I feel like in this draft, I feel like the draft is forcing me to move a little earlier on guys than I normally do. Does anyone else feel the same? Does it feel like it's like it's messing your strategy, or am I feeling like I'm the only one?
No, I think I jumped on Tevin Coleman. Yeah, I was going to say I think I jumped on Tevin Coleman a little bit, but I just don't think he would have made it back to me.
Yeah, I feel like I'm jumping a little bit. Normally I would get. It's only about a round though. I think I think I'm drafting guys I'm normally drafting a round later, whether it's Lynch, whether it's Crowell, whether it's Eifert, even, Phillip Rivers for that matter. I just feel like I'm getting about a round earlier than I would normally draft them. And I know Jim Day says he cannot draft Tyler Eifert. I get that. I also get the upside, and I'm sure anyone who's looked at the numbers as Jim has knows what the upside is as well. But it's a risky play, but it's having Kelce makes it a little easier. And I'll suggest, like, if you're not as worried going, if you're not worried going about 3 deep at the onesie position and you want that tight end production, you could probably get Tyler Kroft in the last round of your draft, and he proved that he can kind of fill those touchdown shoes if you want.
Yeah, we did that starting last year with Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis. I think that's a viable strategy as well. If Reed misses time, Davis could easily have a stretch as a tight end one for a month, I can see.
And Jim is still maintaining he does not trust him. Well, I don't trust him either, Jim. I just don't have to trust him here. This is a spot where I don't have to trust him. So I get your point, Jim, for sure. It's just I also get the production when he's been on the field. So at this point we're going. There goes Cam Meredith. We're getting, they made some moves at wide receiver in New Orleans, Jen. They added Michael Floyd. Not that I think he's going to do anything. Who else did they add? They added somebody else. It's on the tip of my tongue. Any concerns about those moves they're making, or do you feel like Cam Meredith's not on the pup, right? So should be good to go?
No, and should be good to go. Love Cam Meredith. And this is one of those picks where I always say I try to diversify, right? But I have a lot of he's one of those guys that I'm willing to kind of overexpose myself to because of his cost and because I just really love his upside with Drew Brees. I have Drew Brees on my team. I kind of like that pairing in best ball. Pretty much a good part of the reason why I went with him there is because I have Brees. And then Gio Bernard, I think he's certainly a serviceable RB4 on my team.
And the Hugo Perea reminded me, Pena, sorry about that, Hugo, reminding me it was Brandon Tate that they signed, also a capable return man, so maybe not necessarily.
Return man, yeah. I think Merritt's going to be, the Willie Snead of yesteryear. Better.
So let's go back to Emel's draft. If you guys could take a quick look at that as Mike, go ahead and make your pick. Blake Bortles, the most consistently solid guy that nobody realizes over the last 3 years of fantasy.
Top 12, 3 years running.
Top 12. I think it was 13 last year. But look at Emel's draft again. Running backs. I know Emel has put some effort into this to set up his cheat sheet and all. I know he has a strategy here. I'm eager to see how it plays out. What do you guys think about how it looks so far?
Hang on a second.
I could chime in. Yeah, I can't wait to see what running backs he gets personally. And by the way, that Ben Watson, Cam Brate stack. I love that those two picks together because you have Watson who's going to get the receptions, the targets, the yards. Brate, more of a touchdown guy. He's getting a lot of value and a lot of points in the tight end position there. But listen, if Cook, we know, pretty much a lock to be the bell cow on that team. If Drake gets the bulk of the load, great pick there. I'm so curious to. I can't wait to see the other running backs. Emil scoops up.
Yeah, Emil certainly has been listening to. We've been hyping Ben Watson all off season, and I don't understand why he's going as late as he is. And honestly, this is even early for him to go off the board. I would have considered him on the way back, but he caught 61 balls last year. They raved it. They said, "Look, we're not bringing him back to be a coach on the field. We're bringing him back to Ben Watson can play, and he knows his offense, and he's had success with Drew Brees. I think he is maybe the ideal number 2 fantasy tight end on your roster. If you draft one particularly early, you wait until about the 13th, 14th round. He's there in a lot of drafts in that range."
Yeah, I would agree. Jameis Winston went off. Naheem Hines, a guy of the fantasy couch, Hussein the Brain, got him. I think one of the guys that I'm fairly invested in. There is another back there Mike and I like, Jordan Wilkins. I'm sure he'll go at some point as well. Maybe that one of those cases, Mike, where the cheapest guy is the best guy.
I could be, certainly. Like, I got plenty of shares of everyone not named Marlon Mack in that backfield. Not paying. He went in the 7th round tonight. Just not paying that price, man. I mean, I think they've gone out there. You're hearing no buzz about the guy. They went out and drafted 2 running backs. I think that job is going to be wide open. And if it's wide open, I'm not paying the price, like you say, Bob, for the top guy in what could be a committee or, the job's kind of up in the air at this point.
Paul Richardson, I think Paul Richardson is an ideal best ball play. Washington invested heavily in him. Another, not surprisingly, interesting pick by Mike Beers. Let's move over, if you guys don't mind, to take a look at John Lob's draft. Everybody in this draft has 2 quarterbacks except the one person who has 0 quarterbacks. What do you guys think of his approach right now?
Well, I mean, he's taken, waiting on QBs to the extreme, obviously. It could pay off. If you get a Case Keenum type and he has the kind of year that he had last year, you're probably going to be fine, honestly. So you're going to probably have to go with 3 quarterbacks on your roster. At least I would, to feel comfortable if you're waiting that long to get your first one.
Yeah, absolutely. He's gonna have to go with 3, but I mean, there's still quarterbacks on the board. I mean, he could have a guy like Goff still available. He could have Tyrod. I mean, these are still guys who are gonna have.
Get like Goff's off the board.
I'm so sorry.
I mean, how long does Tyrod keep the job? 5 weeks?
Yeah, that brings up a good point, and I'll ask both of you. I'll start with Jen. We talked a little bit about it at tight end. But when you draft a risky player at a onesie position, how compelled do you feel to go 3 deep then at that position?
Definitely if it's a risky player. Yeah, definitely if it's a risky player. So like a good example you could look at right now is my team. I have 2 quarterbacks, Cam Newton, Drew Brees. I'm definitely not. I mean, I will say I'm most likely not drafting another quarterback. Don't need it because I have 2 solid quarterbacks there. If I was going a little risky at the quarterback position, I'd be grabbing a 3rd. Even with Walker, I mean, depending upon which tight end I grab as my second tight end, how comfortable I am with his role, maybe I only stick with 2 at that onesie position. But it's definitely about, I think, draft capital in your own personal draft, as well as, the caliber of the player, how many you're going to take at the onesie positions.
Right. And I just took a guy that I believe this is my first share of, Devontae Booker. Again, trying not to get too caught up in the news. But there's been a bit of a drumbeat, and the latest today is it's going to be a committee, a split. I wanted at least one more running back. It seems like if they have Royce Freeman, who I think looks like the guy who's built to be a feature back to me. You looked at what he did at Oregon, the average per carry last year, phenomenal. The workload he handled, phenomenal. Booker's never showed me that, but at this point in the draft, as a running back too, a guy that's maybe going to contribute, maybe more early on, I guess I'm okay with this.
Yeah, I mean, at this range, around 13, I don't see how you can be that upset with taking anybody that's got it.
I don't like him. Not a fan, but Eddie, that is the point. I don't think they're going to have him play a feature role. I do think this is going to be interesting to see how that whole competition plays out between there and Seattle. Those are the 2 where we're hearing this kind of things. We're not hearing this in Tampa Bay with Ronald Jones. Is anyone else becoming increasingly comfortable with him?
With Booker or Jones?
Ronald Jones.
I'm probably more comfortable with Peyton Barber at this point than Jones.
At his price.
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
not as comfortable with Jones as I was earlier this offseason.
I kind of like him in best ball, though, as the home run threat kind of guy as is, right? I mean, that's kind of his, his rep is he's that guy that'll take it to the house anytime.
He is, but is that worth paying for? If I'm taking him in the 4th or 5th round, where he usually comes off the board by the 5th round, I want a guy that I feel is going to get a pretty consistent amount of touches. Like, I love his talent. I have tons of shares of him, but that's probably kind of shading my opinion here as well, because I got a lot of shares early when the rookies can be had. That's a great tip for anybody who may be tuned in right now. Get into best balls before the NFL draft. If you know anything at all about the outcoming rookie class that's coming into the league from college, you can get great deals. The ADPs of guys like Freeman and Jones and Penny jump 4 to 5 rounds instantaneously as soon as they got selected in the first few rounds. So, do your speculating next year on rookie running backs before you even know where they're going to play.
And also, if you're Mike Dempsey, be drafting during the NFL draft because you might come out. And he was. I was sitting next to him.
That's the move.
About a dozen drafts, Jen. Just wait. I said, I'm not pulling the trigger. I'm going to see where all these guys land. I used my
good for you
clock that day.
Right, he was holding up. And
so there for a reason.
Here we go with Emil, and I think this is interesting. First of all, John Love now has 2 quarterbacks. Guess what? They're solid starters for their teams. Maybe with a little bit of upside, Dak Prescott and Derek Carr. So obviously not a huge disaster for him. Pretty solid waiting this late. But here's where it got interesting. Mike Dempsey did not take Latavius Murray soon enough. Emil got him. And then followed up with Deontay Foreman, a guy who maybe doesn't open the season even on the active list, but a guy we like an awful lot who maybe shows up at midseason with fresh legs and gets a little something done.
I thought about handcuffing Miller, but I typically don't handcuff my second back on the roster. I'm going to roll. I think Lamar Miller showed me a lot when he played with Deshaun Watson last year. I think if they've got that offense rolling, I think it's going to be tough for Foreman to take the spot away from him.
Jen?
Yeah, no, totally agree. So I think with Foreman, Emil essentially drafted Mike's handcuff, and he's a type of handcuff I would draft because he's stepping into a high-volume role in Houston if Lamar Miller goes down. And then with Murray, I mean, you could look at him like Dalvin's handcuff, or I still think Murray has a role in this offense. And if Minnesota has those 4 or 5 games this year where they put up a ton of points and both of these backs are scoring – Emil could have many weeks where, both running backs put up pretty good numbers and really benefit from owning that backfield.
Mike Dempsey has been in the newspapers a little bit today. Danny Amendola made the reporting this morning, or the bold prediction was he leads the Miami Dolphins in catches this year. Are you putting much stock in that, Mike, or is it part of it you have so much Albert Wilson and you're getting a little worried that you felt like the need to balance?
Honestly, I got them both a ton because I was drafting them like 17, 18 rounds back to back. Figuring, look, here's the thing. He doesn't need to lead them in receptions. He needs to lead them in receptions 5 times. 5 times. He's my 6th wide receiver. At this point, you can't think of season long, is this guy worth going into my lineup? I don't have to figure it out when he goes to my lineup. Danny Amendola will have a handful of games where he catches 6 for 90 with a couple of touchdowns, and or 8 for 75 with no touchdowns or whatever. And that is valuable to have on your team, those steady Eddie guys, particularly in the second half of the season when you get a lot of injuries. Now, Danny Amendola is big injury risk himself, but I don't think it's that big of a risk in the 14th round.
Just got Josh Doxson. I feel like, I'm often trying to look for guys that are de facto wide receiver ones this late. I know he took a ding to the shoulder. It sounds like it's not a serious injury. But, I mean, isn't that something that we tend to see in these drafts? Guys, we've seen a lot with Moncrief. Obviously, he went earlier in this draft for Armando. But you see a lot of wide receiver ones or wide receiver twos going after 3s and 4s.
Definitely. I mean, no matter how you kind of slice it for me, it's pretty crazy to see Doxson, who had first-round draft pedigree, going this late. So, yeah, I mean, if he plays half the season or less, he's still a pretty good value in the 14th round.
Interesting. The real question from Dennis Roy is, does Parker or Amendola lead the team in injuries? look, I'm injury agnostic, Dennis. I got to admit, I tend not to pay attention to these things. Look, there's to a degree you have to, like, with Tyler Eifert, with Jordan Reed. There are guys you have to pay attention. Devontae Parker. Although I should note, only one guy in the last 2 years has played on a doubtful designation, and that's Devontae Parker once in each of the last 2 years. So it's not like he's not tough or willing. It's just he's legitimately been hurt. The concern for me with Parker is, we keep hearing the switch is flipping, and it's not. And, you could say the same for Doxson as well. It seems like he's very slow to develop. And for me, if I look at, let's say compare Amendola with Doxson, I think Amendola is going to be a higher volume guy. I just do at this point. So I kind of get that, but I'm hoping for some upside there.
I feel like Mike potentially got the wide receiver one for a team in the 14th round, and that's pretty good for me.
That's why Bob and I have been hyping Dante Moncrief so much, because
exactly
this draft is an exception. Dante Moncrief, to this moment, you can get after Keelan Cole, after D.D. Westbrook. They're taking the fourth wide receiver in Jacksonville. He is a starter in every formation this year as long as he's healthy. Now, he's an injury risk, but in the 15th round, that's where I've been getting 15 and 16. You're right, Bob. I love taking, Jen, any team's potential number one that way, even if they're not a high.
It's crazy that way. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's interesting at this point because we're seeing some of the more traditional, what I would call traditional best ball kind of picks here. The Chris Godwins. I just took Martavis Bryant. I saw Safarian Jenkins a little while ago. Jared Cook, we know, is going to have 4 good games a year, right? We do.
Maybe 3.
We hope. I hope.
Maybe 2.
And as Jim Day mentioned, Kelvin Benjamin maybe is the best example of a guy who looks like he's going to be in line for serious targets. We talked to Mike Rodak today about that. I mean, beyond that, what is there at wideout? There's just nothing there. And I think he's a guy that's being widely overlooked in all formats, whether it's best ball or not. Look, I don't expect a huge season for him, but I expect a hell of a lot of targets for him.
Yeah, Mike Rodak, in not so many words, said, quit fantasy football if you're forced to draft a Bills receiver not named Kelvin Benjamin. And even if you look, I've got a ton of Kelvin Benjamin. I wouldn't touch another receiver on that team. Charles Clay is an exception at tight end.
Right, he is basically the wide receiver too. And there goes Mike Dempsey going after one of our favorites.
Jordan Wilkins, baby.
Right, we've both been going Wilkins, like that last guy. We both kind of like Naheem Hines too, perhaps because he's been on our show as well. Just trying to look at some of the way some of these rosters have been built, looking at Mike Beers, still looking for that running back 4. Jen is even going to get that running back.
He might not. He might not go for it. He might stay true to the brand and just hammer hyper fragile, and I think it's great.
And there's a guy that Emo's starting to take some best ball players at running back as well. Just went Darren Sproles, a guy Mike and I have had our eye on a little bit. Usually able to get him a little later. I do think it's kind of interesting, Sproles, a pretty widely overlooked guy. If you're late in your best balls, don't totally bail on him. I mean, he's still got to secure his role, but they paid him a hell of a lot of money. And remember, when they started the season last year, the Eagles, who was the first back on the field? Yes, it was due to formation, I'm sure, but it was Darren Sproles. So also gets a little something done in the return game. Interesting there. So Jen's at the turn. Just took her guy.
I'm struggling, but I'm going for it. No, I'm going to jump a little bit at a guy who I want on my team, and that's Ed Dixon.
Ed Dixon, because Seattle doesn't have a lot else in the way of tight ends.
No.
Nick Bannett, haven't seen a hell of a lot of what he's capable of. Will Dissly, I think of more of a blocker maybe.
And I was going to say, if Baldwin's knee is really dead, I mean, somebody has to catch the touchdowns, and Russell Wilson does a pretty good job of throwing those touchdowns to tight ends.
Russell Wilson will throw batted passes to himself like crazy all year.
That's all I can do. That's all I can do.
That would be the greatest fantasy season of all time.
It would be pretty amazing to watch.
Double up every time, passing and receiving.
Dennis Roy says Sproles equals the third down version of Dennis Roy of Darren Sproles. Emo goes with Kenneth Dixon. Interesting guy to me, Mike. We've been following his career with great interest, and mostly lamenting his lack of availability.
Yeah, look, I own him. Yeah, it's funny. I own him in some dynasties. And so I feel like in my leagues where I got to manage week to week, I've already got a little bit of an albatross of Kenneth Dixon that I got to carry around because you can't cut him in a dynasty at this point. But I'm like, I've got a bunch of Alex Collins. I'm not looking at Kenneth Dixon. I have more Buck Allen by far than I do Dixon. But there's a small percent chance that all the stars align and Dixon ascends to that top role, at least for part of the season. I just think it's going to be tough for all those things to come in, though.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So we are getting to the best volley portion, and this brings up defenses are starting to go. I'm not surprised in the least at Mike Dempsey's pick, which might have been mine had he not made it. We both love the Chargers, a lot of disruptive playmakers, even as the injuries mount, right?
Yeah, look, I mean, Jason Verrett is a loss. There's no question about it. But they've got great pass rush. They still have a great secondary. All you look for is disruption here. I think, to me, they're right. Jacksonville, number one. The two LA teams are right behind them as far as my interest level. In fact, and again, people say, well, how do you draft before the draft? Before the NFL draft. This year, what I tried to do was go back-to-back Rams and Chargers because both being LA teams, and we're not going to have the same bye week. And they're both top 5 type defenses. So that was something I did a lot earlier in the offseason.
Interesting.
That's smart.
Yeah, Geronimo Allison and Michael Gallup, a couple of Michael Gallup rookie, Geronimo Allison fending off 3 rookies. What do you think of Allison as the third receiver? Do we have a lot of confidence in him there?
I felt better than maybe a week ago before I heard how good Jamon Moore is looking up there. But I don't think it's a bad selection. At this point, you got a chance to get one of the top 3 receivers in the Green Bay offense. Here we are, in the 15th round. Yep. I think it's a reasonable dart throw at this point in time.
Austin Eckler, the guy that will have a couple big games this year. There's almost no doubt about it. We'll catch a pass, take it a long way. We saw it last year. It's interesting that he went so late in this one, given the way the running backs are working. Still curious.
Bob, I'm sorry, can I jump in for 1 second?
Please.
I see a comment about, just to finish up on Geronimo Allison, somebody said, I wouldn't want to die on that hill, LOL. You're in the 15th round. There's no hill, right? They're little bumps that we're standing on. And we're honestly, outside of defenses, which are going to count in your lineup, there aren't many people you can count on. So, look, what happens if Adams gets hurt? How valuable could Geronimo Allison be in that scenario, right? I mean, I just don't think anybody is that much of a reach at this point in the draft.
Right, and that's what I mentioned a few minutes ago. We're in the best volley portion of this draft, and maybe Jen, you could kind of talk about this a little bit. It seems to me like if you want to use a best ball as a mock draft for your season long, you can kind of do that in the first half of the draft, or maybe a little further. There may be some variations, but the real best ballsiness doesn't happen until the second half of the draft, right?
No, yeah, that's absolutely right. And I'm a big advocate of using MFL 10s for your season-long drafts. But, most of your season-longs, there are 16 rounds, 18 rounds. So once we start even getting to the later teens, if you're adjusting for depth, this is where we start to have a little fun and see crazier picks. So Allison, really my opinion on him is if he has 4 usable weeks, if he has 4 weeks where he puts up, wide receiver 2, even high end, or low end wide receiver 1 numbers. I mean, you got a pretty good value for him that late. This is where you're starting to look for those guys who they're just going to give you a decent amount of, or at least have the upside to give you a decent amount of usable weeks.
Show up line up 4 times at this rate. I'm totally with you, Jen.
Right, and I think that's the point right here. We're at this taking the, we're throwing darts at this point. And some of them are pretty good darts. The Frank Gore dart, I think, at this point of any draft is a pretty good dart to toss, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have defenses going here, and now you have a guy who doesn't go away, and he produces in some form or fashion every season.
Interesting how this one's playing out. This is it's moving. It feels like to me a little faster. I'm going to go ahead and grab a guy that we talked about a little earlier because Jen put him on my radar. I have a few shares of him in earlier drafts, but Peyton Barber. And I think at this point I'm going to hit Jen first because Mike's pick is coming up. As you look at your team, Jen, how close are you to where you want to be, or what your ideal is? How close or how far?
I think I'm pretty close. I mean, obviously, I had the 2 embarrassing timeouts.
Back to back,
but could have been worse. I mean, a Cam Drew Brees quarterback stack. Now, like I said, I'm set at quarterback, so I'm feeling really good about that. Feeling really good about tight end. Now I'm in a position where we've got, for me, 4 picks left. I'll burn 3 of them on a defense, and now I have 1 pick left where I can really kind of just like either shoot for the moon or go for even a vet who maybe everyone else is a little low on, or who I think might have a big role. So I'm actually, composition of my team, I'm feeling pretty good about it.
So you've gone 3 deep at 2 of the onesies. Any chance you'll go, or you say you will at defense as well? Any chance one of that 4th pick will be quarterback? Or no? You said you're set?
Done at QB. There's no reason for me to have another quarterback. Not with these guys. I have enough, especially in terms of draft capital. I have enough invested in them. I'm kind of looking at, wonder if Emil will go with another one. Maybe even you look at Dempsey's team. I mean, when you have Brady and then a QB2, do you really need a 3rd? When you invest early in these high end guys, I think you're okay. Going with 2, if you want, up to you.
Is 3 defenses the norm for you, Jen?
Typically it is. It really depends. Like if I find myself like a little thin or weak in terms of talent at a position, I might punt that 3rd defense and try to overcompensate a little bit for where I lacked early in the draft. But the numbers show that 3 defense really is the way to go. It's a winning strategy, and I guess week to week, your defenses have a better chance of at least giving those 8 to 10 points, whereas a guy could give you a 0.
All right, Mike, a little self-assessment here as you review your team and roster for this one so far.
Yeah, again, I'm usually a guy in the first 9 or so rounds will have 2 tight ends on my roster, and had Burton and Reed not gone back-to-back with my pick, I probably would have had one of those guys on my team. So it's a little bit different of the composition that I typically have. But in terms of the numbers, let me just look here. I don't want to get auto-picked. Jen's on the clock, it looks like.
She is.
Looking at
here I am.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 running backs. 5 or 6 is typically what I roster. I've got 7 wide receivers, and I like them all. I mean, honestly, most of my wide receivers could be wide receiver 1s for their team. And the one that wouldn't be is Tyrell Williams. So I'm getting a lot of the Charger passing game with Keenan Allen in there as well. A lot of times I do go with 2 defenses, and maybe that's been to my detriment. Maybe I'd do better if I drafted 3. I'm going to see how it plays out over the next few rounds. I may end up I'll certainly take 1 more. I may end up taking 2, but now with only 3 picks left, there are a couple of things that I've got my eye on, specific players here, and I'll tell you if I get the chance to take them off the board.
Yeah, and you're about 2 picks away. I'm going to go ahead and look at my draft. I felt like I was, this is one of the drafts where that early balance, and I do this a fair amount, and I knew Mike was maybe had an eye on that fellow that he sees every day. Go ahead and talk a little bit about that.
Well, let me just say this. I hear a lot of, I think Corey Grant's going to be the guy behind Leonard Fournette. He's going to be 10 touches a game max, even if Fournette is gone. He's just too small. TJ Yeldon, Tim Cook has a better chance of being a handcuff to Leonard Fournette than Corey Grant does. Corey Grant will be in, few packages, and he is a big play guy. So I'm not saying he'd be a terrible guy to have on your roster in a best ball, but if you're looking for a true handcuff, Corey Grant ain't it. But what do I know? I'm just there every single day.
So how do you feel about this, Mike? Do you have a strong feeling about it or no?
I feel like Corey Grant is not the handcuff to Leonard Fournette. And I hear that from people because I think people saw, wow, this guy looks explosive. He's explosive in small doses. He is not, and he's very straight line. Does not have much wiggle to his game whatsoever. Just don't see him being anywhere close to a 15 to 20 touch guy if Fournette was gone. Even if Fournette and Yeldon were gone, I don't know if he'd go more than 10 touches a week.
Right, and why don't you give us the same talk on Dede Westbrook, please?
Look, I'm not down on Dede. Okay, I will say every wide receiver on the Jags, top 4, Lee, Moncrief, who are the starters, Cole, who is the slot. Those are your starting 3. You got a team that's going to run the ball a lot. They want Dede Westbrook to win the primary punt returner job. That's what their big goal for him is. Yes, he's going to mix in, and if he's the primary punt returner, he's going to be active on game day. There's no question about it. But people have been drafting him as if he's going to be the number 1 or at least the number 2 to Marquise Lee. I'm telling you, at best, he is 4th on the depth chart. And if DJ Chark has more days like he had today where he just tore it up. D.D. Westbrook could fall to 5th on the depth chart on a team that's going to run the ball more than anyone in the league. I own him in Dynasty. I'm not cutting my shares of D.D. in Dynasty. I'm not drafting him at all in redraft and barely on the radar in best ball.
Casey Joyner going with Taylor Gabriel, a guy we've seen in the past who couldn't do anything but score touchdowns, going to a Chicago offense where we all think Tariq Cohen is going to have the Tyreek Hill role, but maybe it's Taylor Gabriel. What do you guys think of that pick, Jen?
Well, you know, I'm a Taylor Gabriel fan.
Why is that?
We had our nice little interaction, but I love that he's in a new offense. I love that he's got the second-year quarterback. I love that we could have some negative game scripts where they're going to be forced to throw from behind. If he fills a role that we see the Ginn, Torrey Smith, Jackson role, I would love that role for him. I'd like to see that role for him. Look, we're in the 18th round. You took Taylor Gabriel in between the Seattle Seahawks defense and the Bucs defense. Pretty good chance at the end of the year Gabriel has more overall points than them.
So as we cruise in towards the last round, we'll see some solid picks here, I'm guessing. And then the last round is your chance to be the smartest person in the room, right? Grab that
Mr.
crazy flyer your little – I always grab my pet, some of my pet guys in that last round. We'll see who's left there. Love the Deion Kane pick. I think he's a guy that's generating a lot of buzz. Saw Hussein the Brain make that pick. Fantasy Assassins, Corey Coleman. I think these are all some pretty solid picks at this point, but I think my favorite one that I've seen in the last 2 rounds, Gerald Everett. Mike, talk a little bit about him. We talked to Vinny Bonsignore today, and we talked to Joe Curley. We talked to a couple people about this.
Yeah, look, I think he's more your guy than he is my guy. But at that point in the draft, he is. I'll admit that. Bob and I draft each other's players a little bit because we influence each other. We talk to each other every single day, before and after, and obviously during the radio show. But Gerald Everett, this offense, they want it to be a little bit tight end centric. Obviously, they paid Cooks and they paid Gurley, and he's not going to be the leading guy. But I think he has a chance to be in that tight end 15 kind of range. And when you're talking about best ball, I invested in what I hope is a top 3 tight end. If I can get a guy like Everett and he can get me by on the down weeks for Zach Ertz, I'll be fine with that. I'll be happy with that.
I'm with you there. Okay, so as we head into this, looks like a number of defenses still going off. I took another one, Buffalo. I don't have a lot of hope, but there are some disruptive. We talk about this a lot, Mike and I. Disruptive playmakers. Jen, is that one of the keys to finding a defense? I mean, if you're not getting one of the frontline guys, if you're not drafting Jacksonville in round 12 or whatever, we know what they are. But you're drafting a little later, or you're drafting your second defense. These aren't the greatest defense. What are you hanging your hat on with these units?
For me, and it's just because of the amount of leagues I'm in, I'm hanging my hat on diversifying them and not taking, notoriously terrible defenses. I spread it out with defense. I try to keep in mind that in addition to the defensive points, you do have the special team points too. It's a fluky position. Granted, they start off with 10 points. I rarely am taking the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, sometimes I'll jump at the Chargers and the Rams. Other than that, I'm pretty much just kind of trying to spread out my exposure to teams and completely not taking bottom of the barrel teams.
And Mike Beers with the comment of the night, the key to defense is cities with Bay in the name. I 100% agree on this. Mike, I'm fascinated by your draft. If you're in the chat, a few words. If you want to chime in a little bit on your running back strategy, I know everyone would love to hear it. Jen talked a little bit about it for you, so I'm hoping you can jump in with that. I'm going to type it in, but just great stuff on this draft in that regard. We talk about the playmakers, right? And that's something that I mentioned. Like I drafted Arizona basically because Chandler Jones breaks blocking sleds. No, basically I wanted, I'm looking for some disruptive playmakers. 1 or 2 guys is what I want to hang my hat on. Look, these defenses aren't the best. I think that's what you're kind of looking for. That's what I'm kind of looking for. I'm going to get Beers to see if he can talk about his running back strategy.
Let's see what it is. I'm sure he's in there.
He is.
You're on the clock, Jen.
I got it. Here we go. Thank you.
There we go.
There
we go. So Mike is on board. It's very fascinating. I think Emil kind of did this to a degree as well. So very interesting. There goes Corey Grant. So here we come into the last round, and we'll have some time to talk about this and maybe look at it. You know, I don't know what the hell has happened in this draft. I'm not even sure what my team is. So it'll be interesting to hear if we can get some of these people who are involved in the draft. I know many of them have been commenting in the chat, but maybe Mike and I and Jen can take a little time to sit back and look at some of these other. Dante Pettis, Matt Waldman's favorite guy for Emo Cadlick. Jen took the New York Giants defense. I heard somewhere they have a really good secondary. Didn't we hear that, Mike Dempsey?
Well, we heard from Eric Coleman said the Jets have the best secondary.
Oh, Jets, right? That's what it was.
That's a little homering up right there.
I think so.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'm about to do something what I think is a little bit interesting here. I thought by far the best team defense that was available left to me was the Dallas Cowboys because they have a lot of potential disruptive pass rushers. But they have the same bye week as my other defense, the LA Chargers, so I could certainly take a third one here. But here's my feel. I'll take one assured 0 at defense because some weeks you get negative points on defense anyway. And I know those guys can't get hurt. They can't go on they can only have that one bye week. They're always going to be in my lineup. But I invested in Zach Ertz very early. I don't feel nearly as confident in Everett as you do, Bob. And I've been planning this pick for the last round since I took Ertz. I'm taking Dallas Goedert in the 20th round. And if Ertz is down, I think Goddard could be a tight end 1. And if Goddard has those weeks where he snakes red zone looks, at least I won't lose my mind.
And, speaking of the tight end position, Gary Davenport was just kind enough to decroft me. It's not appreciated, Gary. Not appreciated.
That was definitely an intentional snipe.
That's like a broadside, That's like something you'd see. That's like a Red Wedding style attack at my house. I don't know. That was a total broadside. So I'm going to be scrambling. I was going to go for the third tight end here. Obviously, it was going to be Tyler Kroft. So now it will be someone else. Cole Beasley, we'll talk about him playing on the outside. Does that interest anybody? The fact that he might have to play on the outside?
20th round, man. I mean, somebody's going to be catching balls.
Not necessarily in context of this draft, but just in context of the Cowboys for Dak Prescott, for the passing attack. Is that sound a little desperate?
You're losing a lot of targets out of that passing game.
Yeah.
I'm not
homerism aside, I think he has much of a shot at leading the team in receptions and yards as anybody else. I mean, he's been targeted by Dak in the past. I know they brought in Alan Hearns and Deontay Thompson, and they drafted Mikey Gallup, but I think Beasley has just a shot as anyone then to lead the team.
So not appreciated at all that not only did Tyler Kroft go, but my final ace in the hole, Luke Wilson, the Detroit Lions tie in goes. So I'm going to do something I never do, and I have yet to do this year, and that's draft a rookie tight end, Hayden Hurst. Not happy about this.
I got to share it with you.
Could have been worse. I mean, I don't know.
Look, they invested in him. It's typically a tight end friendly offense. We talked about Ben Watson, caught 61 last year. I don't think it's out of the stretch to say that Hurst can do the same thing, honestly.
I'm a little disgruntled at this point. I'm gonna admit it. It's the end of the draft. I realize that. I have no reason to be angry at Gary Davenport. Really?
It's okay.
I'm selling myself on this. Willie Snead. Maybe that's who I should have taken. How often do you sit there in a draft and pick or two picks after you think, what the hell was I thinking?
Occasionally.
It happens to me a lot.
It doesn't happen typically with an 8-hour clock, I'll tell you that.
Right. It doesn't happen with an 8-hour clock or with a
clock when you're kind of hosting the draft. Yes, it does happen.
It's true. And there goes Ryan Grant, the man, ex-Baltimore Raven or the brief Baltimore Raven, Washington Redskin. And that closes out the draft for us tonight. I hope you were watching in the chat. Mike Beers did explain that running back strategy, which I find very interesting. I think Emil took it even to almost an extreme, although he got the backups at the end. And look, I think it's interesting. I may have to try this at some point in my drafts going forward. We have some time here, so if y'all have questions, we're prepared to answer them or prepared to vent about the guys that we got stolen from us. I think that would be awesome. Just in general, Mike, go ahead and give a quick assessment of your draft, if you would.
I don't love it, but I like it. I like Fournette, Keenan Allen. I would have liked Kelsey to make it back to me in round 3, but I'll take Tyreek Hill. You know, we talk, Bob, a lot about pairing high floor with risky wide receivers, right? Keenan Allen, to me, is the ultimate high floor guy, or one of them. And Tyreek Hill is a guy who can have a decent floor, but he's certainly going to have those big explosive weeks. So I like pairing up different kinds of wide receivers. You know, I'm not as strong at running back as I'd like to be, but I think with Fournette, Lamar Miller, Rex Burkhead, hopefully I'll get some good games out of Carson and Jordan Wilkins to help me out a little bit. You got to get a little bit lucky in these too. You know, you got to get good health and all that. So I would say it's definitely not my favorite squad that I've had, but I don't like really typically drafting out of the 8-hole. I think it's solid, but not spectacular.
Jen?
Look, all things considered, I mean, when I take into account my draft slot along with the caliber of people that I'm drafting with, I don't really hate how my team turned out. I'm kind of like don't love it, but it's certainly not my worst team. You know, again, like Mike, I'm a little thin at running back, but this is the type of team where realistically, I'm not flexing a running back ever. I'm probably just starting 2 running backs. So if that's Melvin Gordon, and then any one of these other, you know, 3-4 guys, then I'm not doing so bad. I feel really good about my quarterbacks despite the clock. You know, I always draft 3 defenses. Sometimes when I look back at my team and I look at the guys who went around there, you know, I'm looking at Snead, I'm looking at Beasley, I'm looking at Grant, and I'm like, God, I probably would rather have them over the Giants defense. But I try to be super disciplined in sticking to it is statistically a winning approach. So, you know, there's always buyer's remorse in those late rounds. But overall, I feel pretty good about my team.
And Bob, if I could interject one thing, for anybody who feels like, well, I ripped some picks tonight, feel free, call the program tomorrow, rip my picks. I'm absolutely open for that. I guarantee you there's something that I made that people think are head scratching. Nothing personal in any of the evaluations. This is how I feel in the moment. And you know what? We're not always right, so that's why this is such a great application to have as many leagues as we have to find out if our theories come to pass.
Right, and I guess that's the thing. We are all available. I mentioned in this chat feed, if you go to my Twitter feed, @FootballDieHard, and you'll find everybody's Twitter. I link to there. So if you want to jump in, that would be great. If you ask anybody questions, some really interesting stuff. I mentioned also in the chat, I just want to make a very special thanks to Scott Fish, Fanball, MFL Pens. Scott was in the back end of this thing, making sure everything ran reasonably well, and it really did. There were no glitches along those lines. Most of the glitches were pilot error, I will kindly suggest. So most of it on my part. And looking at my draft, I mean, you know, again, I felt like I was chasing running backs, and I maybe overcompensated a little bit as I went Lynch and Crowell a little bit early, but still pretty comfortable with the spread and the balance that I ended up with. Didn't get at the end of the tight ends I want. Mike, just curious, are there any teams that really jump out to you as interesting? I think, you know, we can all agree Bobby Gomez is, but beyond that.
I'll be honest with you. It's been tough enough doing this and keeping track of my own to really see the ones that I like the most. I mean, I think Mike Pierce's team is interesting because he approached, you know, building it way differently than you would typically see. If his guys stay healthy at running back, he could have a dominant squad. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how that one works out. And look, Bobby Gomez may have the last laugh for all of us. If Deshaun Watson and Will Fuller played like they did last year for that stretch, we all may be going, what the hell were we thinking when those guys go to him?
Right. Jen, any thoughts from you on just the overall, the general look?
Yeah, so I like the fun in the different teams. That's typically what, you know, can give you a little bit of an edge. And in regards to Mike's team, the cool thing about his team is he has years of data that support this super risky but high reward approach. Bobby Gomes, as we know, he's got that millionaire mindset. As you mentioned, Emil has a really interesting team. But the only team that maybe we didn't mention that I find super interesting is Armando's team. Armando kicked it off with 2, you know, high volume running backs, loaded up on receivers, came back around and got a couple more running backs, waited on quarterback, and he landed 3 pretty good guys. And then, Bob, the only thing I will say that I really like about your team is you were able to get away with 2 quarterbacks in guys like Rivers and Alex Smith, who were like severely underrated. So I feel like you really hit on quarterbacks there.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like this draft was a bit of a scramble. In general, I felt like compared to most, and you know what? As I sit here and think about it for a minute, a lot of this is because it's a live draft. This is one of the few I've done with the 1 minute timer. I'm doing more 4-hour drafts. I'm doing more 8-hour drafts, and so I think that's pretty interesting. We've tweeted out the draft. I'm going to bring up Emil so he can maybe say a few words about his draft and just about what we've had going on in general. With over the 5 nights of this, it's been a great event. We've had a great time, shared a lot of great information with you over the course of the 5 nights. You can go to fantasysummit.com. If you missed any of it, you can order up and you can watch the replays at your leisure as much as you want. We had great stuff from Mike Dempsey about trading over the course of this. Jen Ryan did multiple segments, including one that's fascinating that we're going to get into more. She's going to get into a little bit on CBS Sports. She's definitely going to get into it on our Sirius show about the correlating the prop bets with fantasy lineups. And there's Emil coming in. We'll talk to him in just a minute. But just kind of recap that and what you got going on there, Jen, and talk about a little bit about the prop bets and the correlation with the fantasy lineups.
Yeah, so for me, it's so exciting because I live for it.
Thank you, sir.
It's how I have
You
fun
have to have
on
at least
Sundays.
one person that still has brain cells.
Oh,
Sorry, I didn't know I was on talking to.
You're not it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a hobby that has become, now an opportunity, and it's fun. I love talking about it. Prop betting and really just the sense and idea it can give you for DFS in terms of expected points, true expected points based off the books of players, and who doesn't love risking a couple dollars every week.
Yeah, and I think the gambling is something now that it is legal, we're going to see a lot more of it. So, Emil, want to bring you on. Just wanted to ask you about the draft, the running back strategy. I thought it was very interesting. You saw what Mike Beers did as well. He has a name for it. His hyper fragile running back strategy. I'm fascinated by it, and it seems like you did a little variation of that almost, whether you intended to or not.
Well, I'll put it like Jen said. You got to go with the flow, and it didn't work. I mean, I really wanted to take a third running back sooner, but it just I didn't like them, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got 6 receivers and 2 running backs, and you got to go. I hope a couple of those other running backs work. You can't have everything. I wanted to take this quarterbacks about when I took them, and I like to double up because you're way out at 11. There's 20 picks before your next, and I don't know if you guys noticed, 8 or 9 quarterbacks went between my next pick. If I hadn't taken that second quarterback, I'd had somebody I didn't want. But yeah, that's my weakness. My weakness is at tight end a little bit, and definitely running back. If those 2 top running backs aren't going to be good, or 1 or 2 of those bottom guys, then I'm going to be hurting. But it'd be great if you weren't weak at all at any position, but things are going to happen. You have to adapt, and you have to accept the fact that at least one of your positions, you're going to have things happen for you to win.
And just generally speaking, as we wrap up the 5 days that was the first ever, the inaugural Fantasy Football Summit, just some thoughts from you on how it went and where it might go.
Yeah. Well, this was hard. But it's a bizarre, it's an exciting idea, really. And it was interesting what Mann said last night is, hey, this is great. We're bringing the community together. We're bringing a bunch of professionals, a bunch of sites, and fans together in an easy way for them to watch us and learn from us. And I'm excited about it. I really don't know where we're going to go with it, but it's maybe we won't do 14 hours in 5 days. Maybe we'll cut it down just a little.
Maybe we'll do more.
Maybe we'll do more. I like what you guys did tonight, and Skip over here, who I was talking to when I didn't realize my mic was on, I was calling myself stupid. It was me I was calling stupid, and he was saving me.
I knew that.
So, but this what you did tonight, maybe we have a couple of these or 3 of these during the five days or however we do it, because I think this is a great thing to do at a little higher rate. People love it. It's a great experience because it's live theory. Mm-hmm. It's live draft strategy. And I think, and especially having 3, and luckily we were able to pull that off. This thing only lets us have 4 stations on, so Bob had to put the the board up at the last minute because we weren't sure. Thank you, Bob. And so, yeah, I think this is it's going to be fun. I hope we need to really sit down and analyze it, but I think it's really been great. And thank you so much for the 23 professionals, including everybody in the room right now, and all the audience. So let's hope we can continue on and do this.
I thought we got great feedback from the chatters. Got great feedback also on Twitter, etc. Everyone, again, if you're not following me on Twitter at Football Diehard, I have the Twitter feeds for everyone linked to there. So if you have questions for anyone, and just to run through it and thank everybody individually, I think it's worth a minute. Jeff Ratcliffe, Mike Valverde, Jen, John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar. We have Mr. Dempsey, my handsome cohort from SiriusXM, and my next to me there. We had Mike Beers, and Mike is doing right now, he's doing some splaining in the chat and really do his Twitter feed, Best Ball Command Center. He has a great tool. He has so much data. Go check him out. Look him up. We have Mike Clay on, doing Mike Clay things, Matt Waldman, Brad Cruz, talking auction. I thought it was a great presentation by him, as well as Curtis Patrick, Alex McCarthy, talking Dynasty. Both did a great job. Jake Seeley and Joe Pisapia talking about sleepers and busts, really entertaining. Evan Tarciano talking season management. Dr. Roto, great presentation from Scout Fantasy. Hussein the Brain, thanks Hussein. You were in the draft as well tonight. Good draft by you. Brandon Marianne Lee. Gary Davenport. I was going to not mention him because he took Croft from me right at the end, but he's the IDP master. Gary, really appreciate you. And we may even have you on Sirius again one day. I'm not
He's
sure.
politicking for a guest spot sometime soon. Come on, Gary.
Also, look, Casey Joyner's a guy. Go out and get his draft guide. Go to footballscientist.com. He has done remarkable work. I have the draft guide. It's fantastic. And by the way, with Matt Waldman, go get the rookie scouting portfolio. Bobby Gomez, you'll see him on Football Diehards this season. Armando Marsal, the yeoman, the man who does a ton of work for us at Football Diehards, did DFS and regular season-long stuff for us on the site and in this program. Drafted tonight, did a great job. And, of course, Jeff Manns closed it out last night in Jeff Manns fashion from Guru Elite. I know you listened to him on Sirius. He did a fantastic job. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, everyone. A lot of you are in here every night adding value to the summit, to the chat, Jim Day. Really appreciate what you were doing. And I don't want to think of Dennis Roy was in there. Chris Rito tonight doing a great job. All of you, we appreciate you all very much. And if you have a few final questions, feel free to throw them out. I'll stick around for a few minutes. Mike, if you want to go, please feel free. I know you've had enough and it's late there.
Yeah, I got a question, Bob. Is the lack of hair on your head genetic or is that a choice? How does that work?
That's me not wanting to be Team Cul-de-sac. You shave that if you don't want to be Team Cul-de-sac. And Jen, if you want to call it a night as well, thank you very much. Congratulations again on the additional work at CBS Sports Center, Sports Line, and CBSSports.com, and for all the things she's going to do. She's not going anywhere, people. She'll still be on Football Diehards doing her thing too, and on the Football Diehards on Sirius. So if you have any final questions, feel free to throw them out at me, and I'll go ahead and take them. And you guys can stick around if you want, or you're free. You're excused if you like. I'm giving you a free pass, but I like you to stick around if you can.
All right, I'll hang out for a few minutes. And Jen, congratulations on your new gig, too.
Thank you.
Yes,
I will say the summit was awesome. You guys know I just appreciate being part of it. I mean, like Bob, you just rattled off so many crazy names of all these crazy analysts that are part of this, and this was awesome. It feels like it's the first of many, and I certainly hope it is.
All right, a few little questions football related to close it out because this was a fantasy football summit, and it seems like the thing to do. Mike Dempsey, your thoughts on drafting an upper-tier quarterback and the wide receiver was number one of that quarterback. Also, this person wants two running backs that could produce running back 2 or 3 stats in the later rounds.
In the later round, okay. First, with the first one, in a redraft, I never try to target a hookup in a redraft league. I think there's too much volatility. In a best ball, you know you've got the chance, even if your guys stink that week, there are going to be other guys on your roster that can pop in. So I actually like the hookup if I can possibly get it. And now we want a couple of running backs who could be like running back 2s. Honestly, one that Jen took, Giovanni Bernard, certainly fits that profile for me, Jen. I own him a ton. He may be one of my 2 or 3 most owned running backs in all my league. Didn't get him tonight. Kudos to you. I think he's a very solid play there. And I think we got to look at some of these guys, Bob, like the Chris Carson, like the Nick Chubbs, right? Guys that you can get in the 10th round. Peyton Barber, that we all get enamored with rookies. I know I do, but right now those guys have just as good a chance, in the case of Chubb being the rookie, going significantly later than the other guy that they're directly competing against in their own backfield. So I think there are a lot of guys who look for split backfield, get the later guy coming off ADP-wise, and I think there are many in best ball potentially in any given week, many guys that can fit the running back 2 profile.
Jen, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, rank those 3 for me.
Diggs, Cooper, Cooks for me. Love Diggs with Cousins, obviously. Cooper, I think he's a guy who maybe hasn't lived up to expectation. Now we're starting to see him in a value, and now he's in a really, really good position to outperform it. And then Cooks for me, he's just not a guy I'm invested in. I understand the perceived role, the perceived capital, but the fact of the matter for me is if a guy like Bill Belichick and Sean Payton kick the tires on him, then for me, I'm kicking the tires on him too. I much prefer Woods or Kupp in that offense.
Mike Dempsey, Fournette or Gordon?
Fournette, obviously.
It's not a fair question.
But look, I think Gordon is fine. I don't have a problem. I've got plenty of shares of all the running backs that come on board late in the first round. But I think Fournette, with the weight loss, is going to be quicker. He's going to be a 300 carry guy in this offense. It's a
volume for sure.
Run it more than any team, and they added an all-pro guard to the mix. They already ran as much as anybody last year. Andrew Norwell in between Brandon Leonard and Cam Robinson is where Leonard Fournette's going to have the most success this year. He'll get all the goal line work. I think this defense is going to set this offense up in good field position. Hopefully they won't score too many of their own touchdowns when it comes to the Leonard Fournette owners, but I think you're going to have a team that's very good and is going to be playing with the lead a lot. Same you could say that about the LA Chargers, but I think Fournette's going to be closing out a lot of games with heavy usage in the second half of this year.
Draft scenario, Jen Ryan. I don't see the name for it. Dennis Mendel has a strange draft scenario. He drafts 4th in the 12-team PPR league, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 flex. He wants to take Antonio Brown, then Gronk, then Rodgers. And that's kind of a 0 running back theory. Is that the kind of...
Big time.
You like that?
You could do it. I mean, I'm probably going Brown, Gronk, and then another skill position outside of quarterback. I could see going Rodgers there, but look, especially in a 12-team, redraft where you have access to waivers and things of that nature, I think you can get a little bit more risky because there's always those handful of waiver wire running backs that pop up. It's risky. You could do it. I'd probably punt the quarterback. I'm okay with an AB Gronk start though, for sure.
His premise is he has 3 of the number 1 ranked players at their position.
Maybe.
And he thought about, and he added he's going to target Jacksonville earlier than he normally would.
He even said going earlier than usual.
Right.
Looking at, look, here's the thing. You may have the number 1 ranked quarterback, and we all understand this. How much more than the number 2 ranked quarterback is he really going to score? Now, Deshaun Watson last year had a spread, but if he's only scoring 1 or 2 more points, give me sometimes the number 12 running back as a much more valuable piece than the number 1 quarterback. And the number 1 defense, granted, I like Jacksonville at the top, but I don't think there's that much separation between them and a handful of others, both LA teams, Minnesota, Philadelphia, maybe Houston, and several others in there. So I like the idea of having the best guy. I wouldn't go crazy about it, though. It's
economics, people. It's supply and demand. It's pretty simple, especially when it comes to quarterback. There are, if you're not in a 2-quarterback league, that's how it works. All right, I'm going to let everybody go. I'm going to let all the everyone go again. Thank you very much. Go to fantasyfootballsummit.com. If you missed any of this, you can buy the pass that will get you full access to recorded versions of everything we've done so far. And we're going to have the mandatory cutoff. Wow.
Scary. I know.
Yeah. And thanks to everyone once again. Really looking forward to doing this next year. We'll certainly come back and revisit some of the things and how it all worked. And if you have any feedback, feel free to hit us up on the Twitter feed at @FF_Summit. You can make comments there as well. And thank you all so much for taking the time to be here.
Hey, Bob, how about a hand for yourself for hosting 5 nights in a row and doing a great job, right? Seriously, right? You thanked everybody else. Hopefully everybody back at home is giving Bob Harris the duty.
They're giving me something.
Well-deserved round of applause.
They're giving me something. I'm getting it on the Twitter mostly, but All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. Good night from all of us here at Emil Cadlick, and Skip Lacombe back in the office doing a fantastic job of making the screens move around right and everything. Appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for coming. Have a good one.